I'm Frede. Been with the club quite a while. We do 4 clinics a year, 2 in the fall and 2 in the spring. Been doing that now for about 2, maybe 3 years. So the whole point is to try to take a look at some of the maybe common things that we do or common maneuvers that we do, and to try to give you some things to look at, maybe practice on, kind of expand your flying envelope, try some things maybe that are new and different, and then master some new techniques. And today we're going to specifically talk about the roll. And the roll seems to be a pretty simple maneuver, and the fact all you do is just roll the plane, right? Well, it sounds there's a lot more to it than that, especially if you want to do it in a controlled fashion, and if you want to include point rolls and slow rolls and other types of things, and just having fun with your airplane. The biggest problem that people face, and in talking to pilots, the things that people fear most in trying to do a roll is being inverted. Because to do a roll, at some point in the time, you have to be inverted. And we all know typically that when you're inverted, planes fall from the sky. So it's that fear, what do I do when I'm inverted and I'm out of control basically in my plane? So what we're talking about today is practicing maneuvers that essentially get you inverted in a controlled fashion so that you have a feeling of control over your airplane. And then when you're performing that roll and you go to the inverted position, you know that you have control of the airplane. There's not fear of being upside down. So really the first thing we start with, and I use this a lot in a lot of maneuvers and in teaching a lot, especially aerobatics as far as competition aerobatics, is the half Cuban. And a half Cuban is nothing more than at the end of the box, we perform a loop until we get to a 45-degree line. We roll our plane over, come down again, come over to this side, do the same thing, come back and forth. That allows us to basically fly in a line, do our turnarounds in a very controlled fashion, and on that downward position is a chance to practice some of those maneuvers. Now, the maneuver that's called a reverse half Cuban, normally we start at a level line. Reverse, we start at a 45 degree. And now we're going uphill. And now as we practice a maneuver and if something goes wrong, we're headed in this direction. And we've got plenty of room to recorrect and get a hold of our airplane. We can do the same thing on the down line on that 45, but if we out of control here and something happens, now we're headed to the ground, panic sets in. Typically we go full throttle because we think we can pull out of it, and we put our plane full throttle at the ground. So practicing most of the maneuvers, we're going to start out with talking about the half reverse Cuban. We're going to pull to a vertical and we're going to perform some type of a maneuver. Keep control over our airplane. If something goes wrong, we're still going up, so we have plenty of time to correct. So the first thing, in a typical half reverse Cuban, we're coming along, we're flying, we pull to that 45-degree line, we get some altitude, we roll the plane to inverted, and then we pull a loop and come back around. At this point, when we roll to our plane to inverted, typically what's going to happen, most planes are a little nose heavy, and we set them up that way because they're more controllable. So as we're on this 45-degree upline, and we roll to inverted, the plane's going to want to kind of fall towards the way to the nose anyway. So that kind of starts that curve. So you can kind of feel that position of the plane, and then we add maybe a little elevator, we get off the throttle, let gravity take control here, let the plane fall from the sky with the control of the elevator, and we're very slowly back on the line again. So the first thing we're going to practice in setting up and controlling a roll is to go ahead and get on that 45-degree upline, start flying a little bit so you're nice and comfortable and the line's kind of straight, roll inverted, and then apply just a little bit of down elevator to push that nose up, so instead of tailing off like this, the airplane continues along that straight line. So you get a feeling for how much elevator you're putting into that plane, down elevator, to keep it flying. When we come out the elevator, make our turn, come back the other way. Same way on this way, pull to the 45, draw a line a little bit so you've got a nice straight line, you know you're in control, roll to inverted, and then touch that down elevator just a little bit so the nose doesn't fall but the nose stays up. Continue to try to fly that line for as long as you can, nice and straight. Then bring that elevator around, get off the throttle, gravity take over, kind of flip back into the level line. That will really help you feel for that particular airplane how much down elevator I need to push to kind of keep that nose in the air. Now, every plane is going to be different. Every plane you set up is going to feel a little different. So this gives you a chance to kind of bond with your airplane to get some idea of how does my airplane feel when I'm feeding in that elevator to keep myself in the level line.
Do you have to do that with your Vanquish or whatever you're doing to throwing plane to? Do you have to put down in it to hold it straight there?
Yeah.
Or is it pretty straight on its own power?
Typically people like to set up their airplane, and for warbirds, it's even more so. Typically for a warbird, if you're flying a level line and you pull off the throttle, and you want it that way because you need weight up front for warbird to keep stability, especially when you're trying to land a warbird. And if you don't have that weight up front, warbirds have a tendency, they like to do a wing drop. If you're a little bit tail heavy in a warbird, you come off the throttle or you get a little out of control, you're going to drop a wing and do a tip stall. So a warbird especially, you're going to have more weight in the front because it's basically a more unstable airplane. For sport airplanes, you want to have some weight up front because it makes it more stable in landing. It makes it more stable in flying. For competition airplanes, typically we balance the airplanes so they're almost neutral. So if I go on this 45-degree line and roll to inverted, for a competition airplane, I'm pretty much going to continue on that line. You're going to see very little, if any, roll off. And then when I'm inverted, it takes very little down elevator to keep my level line, so that when I'm flying inverted maneuvers, it's much easier to fly those maneuvers because now I don't have to put in quite so much compensation in order to hold that line. So for warbirds, you're going to have very nose heavy. Most of our sport planes are a little bit, and most of the competition airplanes are very, very little. And with the competition airplanes, they're set up to really fly well, so it's not quite so much of a problem as far as having a neutral or a tail heavy airplane a little bit if you're landing them, because you still got a lot of big fluffy wings, you've got a lot of surface area on the wings, you've got a lot of lift. So it's easier to control that tail heavy airplane when you've got those big wings. And of course plenty of power in a competition airplane. You get in trouble, you can power out of it. With the warbird, you typically have high wing loading, smaller wings, lots of weight, and if you get a tail heavy warbird, that thing is uncontrollable. That's a reputation for disaster. It's real trouble. So for us, we're talking about sport airplanes, we're going to have a little bit of weight in front. We're going to pull this airplane up, and if you let go of all the sticks, it's going to want to kind of roll off to the top. And that means you've got a nice stable airplane. It's going to take a little bit of down elevator to keep that straight line, but not a whole lot. So when you're coming across and roll inverted, without touching anything, any compensation, you roll inverted, it's going to dip a little bit, and then come back up again. That's why you see in many cases they talk about the military roll, and Mustangs or the Corsairs or some of the P-47s, they actually pull to an upline and do your roll, and let the fact that the plane is nose heavy, pretty much let it roll on itself. So the roll will be on an arc. And the gravity of that tail heavy airplane, when I'm inverted up here, is going to pull that airplane down and basically complete my arc. It makes a nice, big, slow roll across the entire land or across the entire runway. Very, very pretty, especially in a big P-47 or Corsair or something like that. Beautiful in the air. But for us, we're going to try to do level rolls because we have a sport airplane. And to get there, first thing we're going to do is practice 45, roll to inverted, get a feeling of how much compensation I need to make it from the elevator, hold it in a line, and then fly around and come back to level line. That's the way we start the practice. Very good way to do it. So, one thing I might mention is diverse just a little bit. If we go to the back page, when you see some of these diagrams, we talk about arrestee terminology. And arrestee is no more than a series of graphic representations of maneuvers that a Frenchman, happened to be named Arrestee, developed many, many years ago. So he standardized a bunch of pictures that tell us what that's supposed to mean when you're flying it. So if you look at the last page, anytime you see a line with a line and an arrow going completely through the line, and an arrow on the one end, that represents a full roll at some point. If you see the line starting at going up or down, only going halfway up or halfway down, that is half a roll, or a portion of a roll. And if you see a number above that roll, that tells you what part of the roll that is. So if we see a roll with just that arrow and no numbers, that's a complete roll. If we see that full arrow that has a number 2 up there, that means I want to do 2 half rolls. So I do a half roll, hold my position and hesitate, do another half roll. If I see that half of a point that doesn't go all the way across the line and has a number, let's say 1/4, that means I'm going to make 1/4 of a roll. If you see the number 3/4, that means I'm going to make 3/4 of a roll. If you see that number instead of a 1/4, which will be 1/4 of a roll, or 3/4 of a roll, and it says 1x4 or 1 of 4, I'm going to do one of the 4 points of the roll and I'm going to hold it. If I see something that says 2 of 4, 2x4, 1, 2, and hold it. If I see 3x4, I'm going to do 3 points in a 4-point roll. I'm going to do 1, hold it, 2, hold it, 3, hold it, and continue on. If I see a number 4 over that, it's a 4-point roll. 1 point of the roll, hold it, 2 points of the roll, hold it, 3 points of the roll, hold it, 4 session through this particular session is that by the end of the session, you should be able to go out and practice that 4-point roll. Hold it, hold it, hold it, hold it. So we're going to talk about what we need to do to get there and how to control the airplane to get there. So now we're going to practice basically this 2-point roll. 1 point, 2 points back to upright. So we're going to do that on the 45 where it's safe, okay? So now I'll come here, I'll pull to the 45, get a nice line going uphill, roll to inverted, get a feeling again, from my previous experiment, I have a feeling for how much down elevator I need to keep that line, keep on flying, roll to upright. So I've now just completed a 2-point roll. 1, hesitate, and 2. But now I'm going up and I want to turn around. So I'm going to stick in one more half roll so I can complete my turn. So this is probably going to take us a little higher elevation because we're going to spend more time on that 45-degree line. Pull the line, half roll, hold it a little bit, stabilize the line, back to upright, hold it a little bit, stabilize the line, back to inverted, and go ahead and make my turn and come back. And we'll start over on this end, pull up, half roll, half roll, half roll, and then let's return back to the center. So that gives us practice again of inverted. We're not inverted in a situation where we're in danger. Here, if we're inverted and we panic, here, down is good, up is dead. Here, down is pretty good, up is okay, I can fix that.
I notice a lot of people just watching, I would roll instead of making a circle when there's the other track down there. They always do that, but I guess I've never noticed the down elevator like you're saying. I guess it naturally does it, so.
It naturally wants to fall over. And that's a good thing because it makes the airplane stable. But if you want it to continue on, you're going to have to tweak it just a little bit to continue that upward line. So now after we practiced that for a while, we're kind of comfortable with half roll. Okay, I can control that. I can convert it. I'm safe again. Half roll. All I want to do now is come back and start over again. So playing with that, now I have some idea on that up line how much down elevator I'm going to have to push for my particular airplane or the speed I'm traveling. So now, if I come back to a level line, I should have a pretty good idea if I roll to inverted. I'm probably going to apply just about the same amount of thumb to keep that in the air. But what we're going to do first, to get some idea of how that affects us, is we're going to get high. And we're going to go ahead and roll to inverted, but we're not going to touch anything. Our plane's going to start to fall. And now we'll roll back to upright and save the plane. We want to do this high, quite high, depending upon how much nose weight we have. If we have a lot of nose weight, it's going to go quickly. If it's a little bit of nose weight, it's going to go slowly. But this again, we had a little feeling for how much the plane is going to change when we're on this 45 line. When we're on a level line, it's going to change a little more drastically because now gravity is really accelerating that. So if I roll to inverted and just take all my fingers off the sticks, it's going to fall down. I'll roll back to upright, I'll pull out.
Sometimes your throttle is going to affect your nose that you have to put down.
Oh, absolutely will.
Right?
Because typically, and again, we're probably coming, I would say come across the sky about half throttle, maybe 3/4 throttle. Come through with plenty of power so that you've got a good power, you're under control. Go ahead and let it roll and just see what happens to your plane. And let it bring up again. So I'll start over here, roll to inverted, let it fall, come back up, fly around, maybe do my half cubanate or something and come back around again. So the goal is to continually shorten that distance without any compensation from the elevator. Roll to inverted, fly low ways, roll back to upright. Roll to inverted, fly a shorter distance, roll back to upright. So you get to the point where I roll 1 and 2. I'm doing a 2-point roll. Inverted and right back to upright.
Without elevator.
Without elevator. You're going to get a little maybe depression, but you're going to be pretty close to executing a pretty good 2-point roll because you're not giving gravity much time to push your airplane down. So now as we got that feeling, we start wide, let it fall, come back. We're kind of bonding with our airplane at this point in time. We're kind of trying to figure out what does my airplane feel like. And every airplane is going to be different. And we just shorten that distance until we get to the point where bang, bang. And now you're doing a pretty nice looking 2-point roll.
Yes, it is.
Invert it, hold it, and upright. And anytime we go to a point on a roll, we need to be able to hold that point long enough so we fly short distance so we can see we have a hesitation and then back up again.
Right there's where you get scared on the road.
Yeah, that's where you get scared. But now we've given ourselves confidence. We know what to do when we're inverted here. And now we know how much it's going to fall when we're inverted here. So now the next step is to roll inverted, and let's start feeding in that elevator, down elevator, and see how much we can control the flight of this airplane. So maybe we put in too much and it goes up, maybe we put it down and up, it continues to go down, and we push it and it goes up. You might get one of these kinds of things and oscillating a little bit, but you're up here at altitude. And you know you got control because we removed the fear of being inverted over here, right? We're no longer scared of being inverted. So now we can play with it, and you'll find out that before long, that thumb learns a lot, and all of a sudden you're flying inverted across the sky. And then make your turn around and come back again. So now you've kind of got a feel for your thumb, you've got a feel for that airplane, and now you're no longer afraid of being inverted. Well, maybe not as much as being afraid of inverted, because I'm still afraid of being inverted because it's the most uncomfortable position. But you've got confidence that I know what to do with my airplane now.
Yeah,
and I know how my thumb feels to control that airplane. So now, we move on to taking a look at point roll. And we're eventually going to get to a slow roll, which is absolutely probably the most difficult maneuver to handle. Of all the things that I've flown in competition and most pilots fly, the slow roll, to make it look really, really good, is probably the most difficult maneuver. But all these things we're rolling right now helps us get to that point, or at least attempt to get to that point. And talking about points, now we're in the point rolls. Same thing, we're going to fly to a 45-degree line. We're going to fly a 1 of 4, which is 1 point of a 4-point roll. So we'll roll to a knife edge, and immediately roll back in. Because the first thing we want to do is to get a feeling that a knife edge, and then I'm safe. And then I'll turn over and I'll do my turn roll. Because what's going to happen typically when you go to that knife edge, just like on the half roll, gravity wants to take over. You're going to come down to the earth. And coming down to the earth in the knife edge is a much more uncomfortable position than coming down to the earth inverted. Because here I can flip over quick and pull up. Here, which way do I go? What do I do? Which stick do I pull? So we're trying to get a comfortable feeling of being on a knife edge for a very short duration of time. Pull to the 45, pull the knife edge, come right back again, do our half roll, come back this way, pull to the 45, pull the knife edge, come right back again, half roll, and come back. So we'll practice that a little bit. We're really not worrying about too much about compensating with the rudder right now. We just want to get on a knife edge and get out again to kind of feel like, what is my plane doing when it's on a knife edge? What is it doing? Without compensation, without mixing, most planes, if you put them on knife edge, are going to pull the canopy a little bit, and the ailerons will roll. So if I just go to a knife edge and try to hold it with the rudder, my plane's probably going to do this, or my plane's probably going to do that. So we talk about later about compensating with mixes and trying to pull that out, but we're not really going to be on knife edge for a long period of time. Like right now, we're not trying to put it on knife edge, fly across the box, do a knife edge loop, and come back and do the same thing. Right now, we just want to get on knife edge for a short period of time, get a feeling of being there, and then get back out on knife edge. So we'll do that a few times. Knife edge, back out, half roll, and come around. Knife edge, come out, half roll, and come around. So when we start getting kind of familiar with being on edge, now you might think about coming to knife edge and letting it fly a little longer. Maybe put in a little rudder to try to compensate for it, to keep it on that 45-degree line, see what happens with the plane. Because again, I'm going uphill. I got plenty of time if something goes wrong. I'll just roll and come back out of it again. And I'm starting to get a feel for how my plane responds when I'm on knife edge. Because that's just the first part of what we're trying to do. Now we're going to go to knife edge, hold it for a little bit, and immediately roll to inverted and pull out. So we're just kind of experimenting with getting on that up line, getting on knife edge, and coming out again. Now, I'm going to pull to a 45. I'm going to go to a knife edge, inverted, and back to that same knife edge. The reason I come back to that same knife edge is that if I'm going to use rudder to compensate, I want to have my rudder stick moving in the same direction. So if I come up here, I put a little right rudder to keep my flight. I come back here, go back up and keep a little rudder to keep that flight. So I'm going to use the same direction of rudder.
It always seems backward with the rudder, though. If you're going up, you want it to go up higher, so you think you're going to turn that way, but you always got to go the
other way. A little trick, and this is something you kind of get used to, in that if I'm upright and I roll to the left, I put in left rudder to keep altitude. If I'm upright and I roll to the right, I put in left rudder to keep altitude. So if I'm upright and I roll any direction in knife edge, I put in opposite rudder. In other words, if I'm rolling right, I put in left rudder. If I'm rolling left, right rudder. If I'm pulling right, I put in left rudder. So the sticks always go in the opposite direction to compensate with the rudder to keep level flight when I'm coming from upright. Now it gets a little confusing because if I'm inverted and I go to a knife edge, now if I roll left inverted, my stick goes left. If I go right inverted, my stick goes right. So if I'm upright, my sticks always go in opposite direction to keep me in the air. If I'm coming out of inverted position, my sticks always go the same direction to keep me in the air. So rather than thinking about, okay, I'm flying this direction, now this way, which rudder do I need? Oh dear, I can't think about it. Boom!
Go the wrong way first.
So if I'm upright and I roll right, I just put in right rudder. If I'm inverted and I roll left, I put in which rudder? Left rudder. Same way. So, and that kind of comes with a little experience, and that kind of comes from experience with some of the examples we're going to do, and that we're going to practice. I'm going to roll to a knife edge from upright, put in the opposite rudder, either direction. We'll go to that half roll, and I'll go to knife edge, and I'll put in the same way rudder to keep my position. And we'll practice that with Buddy Box here, kind of show you a couple of things, because it's something you just have to kind of feel. I find that if I'm trying to look at my position of my plane left or right, whether I'm upright or inverted, and try to figure out which rudder it is, it really gets confused. So all I do is remember, if I'm inverted and I want to roll to a knife edge, same way. If I'm upright and I want to roll to a knife edge, just go opposite direction. Don't even think about it. Just opposite or same way. And once you try that a few times, you start to feel that versus trying to visually say, which way am I now? Which way do my wing go? And let's see, which rudder I did put in? By that time, it's too late.
Too late.
It's too late. You can't think about it.
You can't think. You gotta act.
And we talked about, well, now we've done basically 1, 2, 2, 4, and around. And let's go up the other way. Let's go the opposite direction. 1, 2, 2, 4, and come back around. So now we're getting on that knife edge. And that's really kind of a pretty maneuver. Now coming up this way, rolling halfway, it's a very smooth and elegant maneuver. Coming the upline and bang, bang, it's a different looking maneuver. But it has its own picturesque value. Now we're going to do a full 4-point roll, but we're going to do on the upline again. So, bang, 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm still upright, so I'll do the half roll and come back around again. So this one's probably going to take you quite a ways up that 45-degree line, but that's okay because altitude is your friend. So if something goes wrong up there, it's not a problem. You got plenty of time to compensate. And once we've practiced that a few times without rudder, because you're really going in on the upline, gravity doesn't have that much effect right now. We just complete those rolls, do that after we come back around. Now we've gotten comfortable doing that. Now we're going to pull to a 45. We're going to roll to a 1 of 4. In this case, I'm rolling left, so what rudder would I put in? Right rudder. I'm going to hold that right rudder. I'm going to try to keep that plane flying on that straight line without tailing off. Same thing that we did with playing with the elevator to keep that level line. Now I'm going to put that on edge. I'm going to play with that rudder to keep that level line. So I get an idea of how much rudder does it take to keep my plane flying in a straight line on a 45. So when I get to my level line, I'm going to do a point roll. Now I have an idea of how much rudder I'm going to take because my thumb has sort of practiced that a little bit. So I can start feeding that in and try to hold that on a knife edge to a point until I can roll through the rest of the rolls. So it's a question of practicing on this upline where altitude is your friend to get a feeling for how does my plane respond when I'm playing with my thumbs, and then applying that to a level line when I'm doing the same thing. We'll also see in this one particular example, it has 4 1/4, 1/4, 1/4, 1/4. That's the way actually the guys in pattern are resting right their diagrams, and I'm actually just see that half of a line with 4 on top of it, or 1 of 4, just a 4, which means there's 4 points in that roll. In this particular case, they have 4 little rolls, each one of them a quarter. But when you see that full loop going through the line with a 4 on top, that means that's a 4-point roll. If you see a 2 on top, that was a 2-point roll. Now we've practiced on this 45-degree line, quarter roll, back to upright, pull this around. to start out doing a 4-point roll on a level line, we're basically going to do the same thing. We're going to come out, roll to a quarter, and come right back again. Fly across, roll to a quarter, come right back again. When you roll to a quarter, you may drop a little bit, you may come off axis a little bit, but you're still going to fly pretty high, and we're just going to go in quickly and out quickly. In quickly and out quickly. In quickly and out quickly. So we're not there for a very long period of time. We don't have to worry about compensating with the rudder for a very long period of time. And we can pop right back out into a safe level attitude. Once you kind of get that down, then we're going to do a quarter and another quarter, and now we're inverted, right? Well, we've been there before. We've practiced that. We know what to do. I know where to put in my elevator to hold my plane level, so I'm safe and I'm okay. I'll fly quarter, I'm inverted, I can fly a little while, I'm under control, I know how much elevator to put in, roll back to upright, then come back in. So again, we want to kind of do this piece at a time, find the comfort level, and then start adding to it. So quarter and a quarter back, let it fly. A quarter back, let it fly. Quarter the other way, back, let it fly. Quarter, let it fly. And let's go a quarter, and then use my elevator to keep my plane flying level. Come back, half, and finish whatever I want to do for a turn. Whether I want to do another Cuban, whether I just want to make a turn and come back in, whatever the turn on is in. But get feeling, getting on the edge, coming back, getting on the edge, coming back, getting on the edge, and then getting inverted, flying for a little bit where it's comfortable, and then pulling out. Once we got a feeling for that about going a quarter and a quarter to go inverted, now it gets a little bit more complicated, because here we're doing, if I do a quarter left, I'm putting in right rudder. If I do another quarter, I'm inverted, so now I'm adjusting with the elevator. So I've kind of got the feeling for going to a knife edge from upright. Either way, I'll put in the opposite rudder. Now, I've been comfortable flying inverted. I know how much elevator to use. So the first thing I'm going to do is roll to inverted. Now I'm going to roll to a knife edge. If I roll right to a knife edge, which rudder do I put in? Right rudder. Same way. So I got right rudder, let's bring my plane up, and now just roll to level flight. So come back again, roll to inverted, kind of get control of your airplane so you're flying nice and level. Roll either one way or the other, put in the same way rudder, hold the knife edge just a little bit, back to upright, make your turn. So now we've gotten comfortable with going to that quarter to an inverted position, and now we got comfortable going from the inverted to an upright position. So now what's next? Should be easy, right? Get a lot of altitude. A lot of altitude.
It's only 200 foot
because
altitude.
the mind, I find, tricks you. So I'm thinking about, okay, I'm upright, I'm going to go roll left rudder, roll inverted, down elevator, roll left. Which way?
Right,
Same
left
way.
rudder.
Left rudder, and back to upright. Now you're really going to screw this one up because your mind just somehow just doesn't catch up. But that's why we're going to do this a lot of altitude. That's why we're going to practice a lot in going up lines, and we're going to practice in going from upright to inverted with quarters, and from inverted to upright with quarters. So when we get to this point, we're trying to link it together, quarter, 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 quarter. If you complete the 4-point roll, we're there. And you'll find that if you kind of put these things together in steps, that it all does start to come together. But you really kind of have to practice the steps go along the way. You just can't think, okay, I'm going to go out and fly a 4-point roll. They said do opposite rudder, same way rudder. That's pretty easy. I'll just go do that. That's not going to happen.
Get over that initial scare of upside down.
Upside down is the biggest problem, because when planes are upside down, the way we have them set up, because they're heavier than those, they want to go downhill. And they will go quick sometimes. So that's kind of the idea of linking together the half roll to begin with, getting comfortable with that, getting comfortable with being inverted. Then from the half roll, linking in the quarters and coming back and practicing that, both directions perhaps, and then getting inverted and practicing that, and then finally getting to the point where you're going to link that together. You'll find out that once you kind of get that down and you kind of get that opposite rudder, same way rudder in your mentality in your head, it becomes a lot easier. And I found myself, I was just practicing the other day the new routine for the pattern for next year, and it has a 4-point coming across the sky. And I screwed it up. Yeah. The old mind just defeats you at times, like, oh, what was I thinking? Whoops, it's going towards the ground. Pull out quick. And it'll happen. So altitude's your friend. Now, as I mentioned, the most difficult thing, and I try to practice all the time, and it's very, very difficult, is that slow roll. Because now all the things we talked about, we're going to start here and go all the way across the field in one roll. So that means at this point, if I'm rolling left, I'm feeding in a little bit of right rudder to the point where I get most of my right rudder. Now I'm coming out of the right rudder a little bit because I don't want to have too much right rudder. If I have too much right rudder, my plane's going to go this way. So now, as I'm feeding out of the rudder, I'm feeding into the elevator to keep me up. And now I've got to start to feed in the other rudder, come out of the elevator a little bit. Now I'm into the full rudder with no elevator. Now I'm coming out of the rudder, putting back in a little more up elevator, finally getting over here. And you'll see some guys that do that, they practice it for a long, long time, and it really is pretty because you can fly across the entire nice slow roll. It's a really, really pretty maneuver, and very beautiful maneuver. Now, in some cases, the pattern guys have a slow roll one direction, and then a slow roll the other way. That will really screw up your mind.
About the rolling circle.
Oh yeah, not even thinking about that. Yeah, I think he's right. In some cases, we have a circle where we're doing a roll here.
Well, that's a loop. A circle is horizontal.
Well, this is a rolling loop. One complete loop with a rolling, one low, and then the rolling circles where we're doing the same thing. We're
Like you got
here.
the idea. Bill,
We're up right here. We're inverted here. We're up right here. And then they really get tricky where they do a third and a third, where they have roll this way for a third, roll this that way for a third, and then come back in this way for a third. And your mind just doesn't follow that. It's like,
and never lose 10 foot of elevation.
Yeah, we can't do that. That's not possible. So these guys are really good. But they are fun to watch those. And typically they'll fly the huge circles because by the time they complete this rolling circle, they're way out there in Apache Junction. And like, you can't even see the plane. They're trying to figure out which way rudder's going, which way elevator's going, how slow it's going to roll. I got to reverse and roll, all that type of thing. They're very, very good. They're fun to watch. So slow roll is extremely difficult. If you try to practice those, practice very, very high.
Very, very high.
Very
97 feet.
And snap rolls. Snap rolls are a very violent maneuver, and they're actually a lot of fun. They're all speeds and all configurations. But basically, a snap roll is a stall maneuver. And the first thing that happens is the airplane pitch changes. We kind of get into a stall, and then typically you'll add a little bit of elevator, and you'll kick in some rudder. And what happens is that both wings are sort of in a stall position, but one wing is stalling more so than the other. So you get this kind of pitch up, and the plane does something we call auto rotate, where you can see this particular pointer, and that the rudder rotates around the axis of travel, that the airplane sort of twists and folds. And a real snap roll, if it's done properly, you'll come up a little elevator, snap this way, tail will auto rotate, and you'll actually come out displaced from your original line and higher, because you stalled in upward motion, so the airplane is actually moving up in a stall position, and it's stalling unequally from wingtip to wingtip, so that the plane comes out displaced. So a real true snap roll, especially you'll see this in full scale, is that they'll snap, they'll wind up at a higher elevation, they'll wind up at a different line than they started with. Now, the snap roll is probably the most controversial roll in competition, because depending upon the trend of the judges, some people get away with a bump and roll. They'll just bump the elevator, do a fast aileron roll, and say that was a snap. Did the judge catch it? It's pretty tough to see. Did my tail auto-rotate? Don't know what happens fast. I couldn't tell. Did I get the pitch? Yeah, probably got the pitch. But did I get the auto-rotate? No, I don't know. Well, the whole thing about the judge is that if you can't really tell, you always give the benefit of the doubt to the pilot. Now, that kind of varies depending upon how educated the judges are. So an educated judge will see that. That's a 0. Because you didn't see the stall, you didn't see the auto rotation of the tail, and you didn't see basically the displacement. A few years ago down at the Tucson shootout, the judges were more critical of that, and some of the top pilots got zeroed. And there was almost came to fisticuffs. Because they really weren't doing snaps. They were doing a bump and a quick aileron roll. But it happened so fast, I can't tell. But a really true snap, you can tell it's a snap. You'll see that thing come up like that, and you'll see that plane whip. And that's like the full scale guys do it. So To do a snap roll, we're going to do it the opposite direction because we want to do a snap roll to start out with without throttle. Because again, a snap roll is a very violent maneuver, and if you're doing this under a lot of power, you can start ripping things off your airplane. So in this case, we're going to do the full regular half cube of 8. We're going to start on the horizontal line. We're going to come up over the top, roll to upright, and now zero throttle, gravity's our friend, we're just kind of coasting down this line. Now we're going to hit up elevator and rudder, or up elevator, rudder, and aileron to kind of give us extra roll, and do the snap on the way down. So the goal is to, over the top, upright, snap roll, to level flight. We got plenty of time to pull out to the flight level. So we'll try some of that here with the airplane in a minute. But that's the easiest way to start with a snap roll. That's the less destructive way to start with a snap roll because, again, under high power, things can fall off your airplane because it's really hygiene maneuver. Once you get kind of comfortable with that, then go ahead and pull in the upline, give it maybe 3/4 throttle, do the same thing. Do your snap roll on the way up, see what you can do. Then try snapping to the left, try snapping to the right, see what feels better to you. You'll find out that, again, remember we got our propeller is rotating this direction. So if we snap to this way, the torque from the motor actually assists the roll of our airplane. So the airplane is going to snap differently to the left than it will snapping to the right because now we're opposing the torque of the rotating propeller. So you'll find out if you start playing with the snaps, the plane will behave differently snapping to the left than it will snapping to the right. And that's really due to the torque of the motor. You're either working with the torque of the motor or you're working against the rotation of the motor. Any questions on that?
Sounds
pretty simple,
like it's
right?
more complicated than what it looks like, then.
Yeah, that's right. The roll seems like I'll just go out and spin my plane and that's fun and we're over with. But there's a lot to it, and it can really be very, as I mentioned, very elegant. Especially if you're at the point where you can master that slow roll. That is just beautiful. But point rolls are pretty impressive too, and you'll see guys do point rolls, bang, 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 and that looks pretty good. Or you'll see guys do point rolls, roll into the roll, hold it, roll into the roll, hold it, hold it, roll into the roll, hold it. My personal preference is that one. I think that's a lot prettier than just bang, 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 bang. The kids like to bang, 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 and the older guys like to be more gentle with it. So maybe that has something to do with eyesight and reflexes. Probably does.